much, Annette. And thank you everyone for coming. I know it's a late afternoon on the second day of the conference, and so I appreciate that a lot of you have come down to see this session. I'm really hoping inside this session to share something with you that I've been doing over the last 5 years with several different teams that I think is a really great tool for engaging your teams. And so I'm hoping to keep the content fairly light, given how late it is in the afternoon, but also practical, that maybe you can take some of these things away and experiment with your own teams and maybe apply some of the things that we're doing. I've been really excited. We've had a lot of technology transformation at the University of Adelaide in the last year, and a lot of that's happened in my team. And at first I felt maybe I should be coming to this conference and saying something on the technology that we've been building. But I'm pretty passionate about the fact that a lot of that technology change is really enabled by great collaboration and engagement with the broader organisation. And so one of the things that really encouraged me was all of the keynote speakers who've, of course, supported that view. So the difference, I guess, with my presentation is that it's rather than being about a broad aspect of engagement and collaboration in the university, this is one very practical tool or approach that I think it might be worth trying to use in your own organisations. So to start with a motherhood statement that I'm sure we're all aware of, universities are very large and complex organisations. I think the problem is that a lot of our teams work in a very specific area of that university, and they're very used to coming to that place and often have a very limited view of that much larger organisation. And so the flagpole meeting is a way to try and generate some broader perspectives, some different views into that organisation to, I guess, enlighten our team a little bit in terms of the things that they need to do. Now, the teams that I've been working with have been technology teams. Over the last 5 years, they've been teams that have supported learning and teaching technology in the university. Sometimes, as at the moment, back-end technical development teams, but also at times teams that have had a second-level support task, so they've been taking on calls from academics in terms of how to use our learning management system and other learning and teaching tools. And the idea of the flagpole meeting is that there's really these three elements that I want to try and bring into the flagpole meeting. One of them is an aspect of mystery or surprise, so it's about actually getting people a little bit excited about something that they don't really know quite what it's going to be. The other one is about exploration. It's about getting out there and seeing sort of the broad aspects of the organisation. And the third one, which I hope to kind of explore with one practical example that sticks to my mind, is serendipity. Just when you kind of put these random aspects together, sometimes, you know, the whole is more than its parts. It comes together and generates some surprising outcomes. Why am I doing this? Now, when I started to do flagpole meetings, I was actually not working for the University of Adelaide. I was previously employed by RMIT in Melbourne. And the place where you see that little yellow arrow there is where my team was located. And the place where you see the larger yellow oval is where most of the city campus of RMIT is located. So we had an issue of physical distance, and it wasn't just that people were turning up to that little arrow every day to do their work. There was actually a disincentive to go the 5 city blocks up to the rest of the campus and visit there. The other interesting thing is right across the road was Flagstaff Gardens. And Flagstaff Gardens, for those of you who've been in Melbourne, it's got a little hill in it, and on top of the hill there is a flagpole. And in the 1840s, that flagpole served to signal ships coming into the bay in Melbourne. And I thought it was interesting because it's a visible landmark. So the idea of flagpole meeting is to kind of attract the team to visible landmarks in order to go and take them to other parts of the organisation. So that's kind of where the name came from. Oh. So what actually is the problem? The map indicates that my team was far away. In some cases, the team doesn't have to be physically far away. It can be just emotionally disconnected from what the organisation does. People come in and they think, well, this is my job, this is what I'm here to do, and forget maybe that they're doing that job in the service of a larger organisation. So that's that's the initial part of the problem. The further part of it is when we're interacting with people through all of this technology that we've got, often we're not talking to people, we're sitting in front of computers, we're talking on phones. Sometimes we're taking service calls and we've got SLAs to meet in order to get a response to somebody. There are a whole bunch of concerns that take us away from actually understanding what the person on the other end of that transaction really needs us to do. And that results in the fact that we often miss the mark. And we're going to mention escalations a few times, and I'll come back to that right at the end of the presentation because there's an interesting aspect to that. But we know we've missed the mark when we don't actually provide good service, but things get escalated and require further attention. The bottom line is there, I don't think we understand our customers. I always put customers in quotation marks. So we don't understand our students and our academics and our other staff inside the organisation. And they don't really understand us. They don't actually know us. They don't know what impacts on us. So just in the background there, that is our office environment. So when I stand up from my desk, that's what I see. That's what most of my team will see when they come in every day. And that's what they think working at the university is all about. This is the basic recipe. This kind of gives you everything that you need to run a flagpole meeting. I'm going to go through this first, and then I'm going to, I guess, unfold a little bit more in terms of what the content of a flagpole meeting might be, and also give you an idea of what are some of the fantastic outcomes that you can expect from it, and also what are some of the pitfalls that you should maybe try and avoid. It's not a complicated recipe. I set aside, we used to have a regular weekly team meeting, and as our team became more agile, I set aside every fortnight that same team meeting time slot to be a flagpole meeting time slot. So the team would expect on a regular time, it doesn't have to be a fortnight, it can be on a monthly basis, an activity to occur. And I'd arrange an activity, I'll go more into what those activities might be, without telling the team anything about what that activity might be. About 3 or 4 days beforehand, our meeting was on a Thursday, so I would announce on a Monday the location where the flagpole meeting would be at. And the location might be a tram stop, it might be a cafe, it might actually be a flagpole. It's an easy to find landmark that's not the place where we're going to do the activity, but is close by to it. And so people would know that they'd need to be there. And then reinforce that it's really crucial to be there on time because, of course, if anybody turns up late, you're not going to be there anymore. You've moved on to somewhere else. And I found that if you do it just after lunch, a 1 p.m. time slot, that works really well because people go to lunch and then they come to that location, and often as a group. And remember, keep the detail of the activity secret. When everybody turns up at the flagpole location, move along as a team to the activity, and then it's revealed in context of the location where it is to happen. So in your minds, you're probably thinking, okay, what is this activity you're talking about here? So there's kind of several different areas of activity, and the great thing about universities is because they are so large and complex, there are a myriad of activities that you might try. So I'm just going to give you a few examples, but colour in the dots yourself because you'll know from your organisation there are many different things that are done at the university. So let's start with the obvious one, the classroom. There are many classrooms. There are many teachers who teach in different ways. There are some examples of normal courses that are learned by many students that are core to how the university works. There are examples of innovative teaching. There are different types of classrooms with different types of setups. One of the earliest flagpole meetings that I ran was one with a particular staff member at RMIT who he was quite the instructional technologist within his department, and he used both Blackboard and a kind of a live video capture within the class on a smart board, and also was assisting his colleagues in terms of using that technology. And wanted to demonstrate this to us. And he happened to be also, because he was supporting so many other staff, there was always a lot of support calls from him. And so some people within the team felt he was a bit pesky because sometimes we'd have up to 60 support calls open for him. But he was actually supporting a whole department, which was something that came to light out of this activity. On this one particular occasion, we turned up inside his room, and he'd actually had the AV team out there to make sure that everything was set up properly. He was very proud to be able to show us this fantastic work that he was doing. He was happy to have some people there who understood the technology that he was using. And he started to demonstrate, and about 15 minutes into the demonstration, things started to go awry. His blackboard shell really wasn't looking like what he expected it to be looking like. And he became very embarrassed because he was trying to show this fantastic work that he was doing. But in fact, the thing that was showing up was an issue that he was having regularly, because he would have 2-hour classes, and inside those 2-hour classes, this kind of problem would occur, which was a problem with Blackboard. This is the example of serendipity, because what was actually happening is it just so happened that our nightly refresh was running at this point in time, and inside the refresh script, there was a point at this time when we were sitting there where his course was deleted from Blackboard, or his configuration was deleted from Blackboard, and there was a point about 45 minutes later on where it was all reinserted again, and that just so happened to coincide with his class time. The reason why I say it's serendipitous is he had reported that issue several times to us, and there's no way that our team would have ever seen any trace of that, or even thought to look at that aspect of the job. And here we were all sitting there, and you can imagine how the team would feel when he had previously submitted that job and they'd looked at it and said, no, your Blackboard shell is fine, but now everybody saw it. So it's a really convincing way to show your team, some issues that occur. You can't necessarily guarantee that that's going to happen. A more recent example is in December, we observed a flipped classroom example with one of our leading academics in the arts area at University of Adelaide. It was a slightly modified flagpole meeting in that in a flipped classroom, obviously you have to do some of your lecture material beforehand, so everybody was asked to watch a YouTube video before turning up to the flagpole meeting. And then this academic managed to compress 6 weeks of a course into a 30-minute period, and demonstrate this to our technical team, who are all very experienced at looking after the LMS and are very used to the term flipped classroom. And at the end of it, I was very surprised. The whole team walked out, and that had been their first practical experience of what it's actually like to experience a flipped classroom. And the reason why that's significant is because most of these people went through university 10, 15, 20 years ago, and had experienced a completely different type of education environment and really weren't used to these modern ways of teaching, these modern pedagogies. And so that was a real eye-opener. So the classroom is the obvious one. But further than that, not all student activities happen in classrooms. There are a lot of specialist laboratories there. This particular picture is at the University of Adelaide Roseworthy campus, and it's a veterinary hospital. We also have dental simulation labs. There are lots of different specialist spaces, and it's very easy to think that every classroom is just a room with a whole bunch of chairs inside it. So exploring those specialist laboratory spaces is also an exciting thing. Beyond that, universities are exploring emerging technologies, and emerging technologies give our teams ideas about what we maybe should be taking into account in terms of our work. So there are innovation labs, there are research centres, there are advanced manufacturing labs. So very interesting 3D printing activities might be going on. Our most recent flagpole meeting was actually exploring a VR environment that we've got set up at the university, and we were sort of challenged, how are you thinking about VR in the online learning space? Going there and talking to people who are exploring the VR space together with the team that's trying to support those systems is a really fantastic way to start a conversation. And I guess that's the point. The idea of the flagpole meeting is that there is no specific agenda. I guess all of the outcomes are about the happenstance of bringing together several different ideas, and that happens really interestingly with new technologies. You find some of those ideas kind of emerging back out at a later stage. Libraries, I like libraries. I love libraries from a perspective that they're sort of the heart of the university. And in a sense, when you're managing a technology team, they're kind of a very complex aspect of the organisation as well, because often the history of the organisation can be traced through through the library, not just in terms of the records that are stored there, but often the library has some ornate buildings that were originally part of the organisation. But also these days it's a fantastic place for collaboration. So just to see how students interact and interact between themselves and with academics in a less formal space. Also, the librarians bring the aspect of combining together different aspects of the university together. So they're already kind of an integrator of different ideas from the university. And beyond that, obviously, libraries at the moment are a fantastic place of transformation in the organisation. So a lot of change is happening in libraries. So there's a lot of impetus there to think about what happens outside of the classroom, which is also very relevant to the experience of the student. Galleries, museums and exhibitions. I think all universities have these in places. And these were always my lazy excuse. So when I hadn't gotten around to organising anything, I would look in the staff newsletter and see, okay, is there an interesting exhibition going on somewhere? Or, are students displaying some work somewhere? So these are a really easy thing. And you would be surprised if your team don't get out of the actual office that they're working in very much, you'd be surprised that they might not know that there's an art gallery on campus, or in this case, a minerals museum tucked away in one corner of the building. So it's a really fantastic way to show the diversity of the organisation, and sometimes maybe don't take them to the anatomy museum the first time around and freak them out, but there are all these fantastic places around the campus to just go and visit, and again they just broaden perspectives. And finally, university events. I wouldn't suggest this one as the very first flagpole that you do, but around orientation week, everyone's always looking for staff to try and show students something about the organisation, and the orientation week is probably the best time to get your team involved with actual students that are starting and get some experience of what the student experience for a new first-year student who's starting is actually like. So organise a flagpole meeting, get them to arrive at a particular location, and then move to the technology services booth or the library booth, or a location that is actually helping students, and just get them to work on that booth for an hour, interacting with students, handing out material, and seeing what these new students are like. All right, so these are just some of the results that I've seen out of flagpole meetings. The team is curious. If you start one of these things, it's probably not going to be the thing that your team expects, and that's probably the best thing about these meetings is that's not how they expect. A lot of people don't see it as part of their role, and I'll come back to that again in a minute. So they'll be curious, and they'll be a little bit excited about doing something different. I find it really builds a type of team resilience. When a team's in a very insecure position, when they don't really have a good understanding of the organisation that they work for and the things that come from there, and you're kind of building stories that the team understands, and they can relate that back to work that comes in later on, and I find that theme does come through. So people talk about these things after these meetings. And those, as I've just said, basically they reuse these stories, and it reflects in their later work. And the team will want to do more flagpole meetings. This next point, your customers, can be turned from detractors to supporters. And I've mentioned again escalations I'll come back to in the last slide. But the general point here is if you're actually engaging people around the university and say, my team would really like to come and see what you're doing, people generally react very well to that and are very happy to show, this is what I do in my work. So it builds relationships. And vice versa, suddenly the team is more happy to go and visit these customers and actually work together in partnerships with them because they have some understanding of what it is that they do in their day-to-day job. And finally, and I find this most strongly, is that team members will want to lead or suggest flagpole activities. And I found that, so I've now implemented this in a smaller way at University of Adelaide than I did previously at RMIT. But in both cases, I organised some, and when they stopped coming, people said, oh, when's the next one? When's the next one? And the first time I did this, I organised them for the first half a year, and after that, the team organised it themselves. They actually wanted to, they had ideas and they wanted to organise this for each other. So it becomes a self-supporting thing. But things can go wrong. So this is certainly a psychological game, and it's really important to be aware that you're sort of playing with people's heads a little bit, because people will be insecure about leaving the job that they're aware of and going and doing something different and unexpected, especially if you're not going to tell them what it is. So, make sure that don't do this with a team that you've just started to lead. And by the way, it doesn't have to be the team you lead. It can be the team that you're in that you do this with, so you can influence people within your team as well. Make sure you don't do this with a new team, and make sure that you have some understanding of what people are sensitive about in the team, what those personalities are. You need to build trust, and you need to start with a safe activity. The very first flagpole meeting I ran was actually at that flagpole at the Flagstaff Gardens, and all it was getting people to turn up there, and I brought along some afternoon tea, and I explained to them this idea about running flagpole meetings, and I got their buy-in. That's probably enough for the first activity. It gets that excitement and curiosity going, and you give them a chance to raise any concerns that they have. You maybe don't want to do any more than that, and then slowly build up. There are some activities that you never want to do with your team as a flagpole meeting. I learnt this the hard way when, and this kind of breaks a few of the rules of the flagpole meeting in any case, but I decided to take a team to do escape rooms on a flagpole meeting. And for those of you who don't know, that's where you get locked in a room and you have to solve certain clues to find your way out of there. That's the sort of activity that people want to have some pre-warning that it's going to happen, and I learnt that in a very hard way when I tried to do that. The flip side of what can go wrong is people may see this as playing around. People go, okay, you're playing games with us. This is a fun thing. It's an optional thing. So I've had people say, look, I'm sorry, I can't come to the flagpole meeting because I've got this important paper to write. And the only correct response to that is understanding your organisation, the organisation you work for, is as important as any other part of your job. I normally let that go once, but if people don't want to participate in this, I see that as really being a time management issue on their part. It's not more important to write papers than it is to go out and visit people within other parts of the organisation and understand how they work, especially not when we're in a position where we offer services to those areas. So this is fun, but it's not games, as in it's not recreational games. It is actually a serious part of people's jobs, and that needs to be reinforced. A couple of variations. We started to do a version of the stand-ups in our leadership team meetings, and we had early morning, we had 9 a.m. leadership team meetings. They were agile meetings as well. And we did what I called coffee shop stand-ups. So instead of a flagpole location, we picked one of many coffee shops around the campus, and we would meet there, and then we would go to a building or a location and basically just have our meeting in a different location, so we'd explore different parts of the campus. That's particularly good also when there's staff changeover, because people, campuses are complex and you have to find your way around from building to building, so it's actually a good way to get to know those places. And I promised you at the end I'd come back to the escalations. Escalations are something that, sometimes when you're responsible for a support queue, you kind of fear that there's too many escalations coming through, people are frustrated, people are upset. I learned to really appreciate escalations because somebody who bothered to actually escalate an issue beyond the initial call that they made was actually passionate about something that was going on, and I wanted to find out what that was, because there was something going wrong and there was an opportunity for us to make that better. So escalations was something that I enjoyed looking at to see whether there's actually something further than just resolving the escalation, and I would go and meet those people who'd made the escalations, find out a little bit about what they did, and if there was something interesting there, which there often was, I would actually make that a topic of my upcoming flagpole meeting. So the escalations were actually turned into a team activity, and the really surprising turnaround on people that I did that with, when I then went to them and said, hey, what you're doing is really exciting, can I bring my team to come and see this, was amazing. And you can turn people who potentially might complain about your service into some of your strongest supporters by doing that. So that was a really fantastic outcome to use, and has made me think very differently about how to use those types of calls. Okay, so that was my presentation. I'm really hoping that out of that you can take the core of what a flagpole meeting is and maybe apply that to something that you do. It is a very simple process, and the university is a really rich ground for doing these sorts of exploratory meetings. You often don't have to do anything else other than your everyday job and sharing your discoveries with your team. But it's that aspect of mystery and intrigue that builds the buy-in for the team. And it generates a really positive engagement with the broader organisation. I found it very useful, and I hope you do too. Thank you. So the team I manage at the moment, I have two teams I manage at the moment. It's the online applications team that I do this with, and there's 12 people inside that team. Yeah, and it's about the same size as the team was at RMIT previously as well. The feedback has been more positive than I expected, especially since my team at the moment is a very technical team, and there are people there who really do enjoy sitting behind their computers and coding. And to some degree I find that, they enjoy these opportunities being organised for them, because they're kind of placed in this position without an expectation. I don't expect anything of them. They only have to turn up and watch and learn from that. So they've been very positive about it. Yes, fantastic. Thank you. So one of the things my other team at the moment is the AV services team. So a little bit like desktop support, they're actually out there a lot more in terms of interacting with people. And I wonder whether it's possible to have more targeted types of flagpole meetings, because they still have a very particular experience of what it's like to work. So your desktop support team, for example, will most often have issues escalated to them that need attention. They'll walk into a classroom and they'll fix that up, or into an office and they'll fix that up. How often do they get the chance to actually stand back and see the bigger picture of what's happening in that classroom? So I think that's the opportunity, but maybe it's not as much low-hanging fruit as it is with teams that don't generally have contact with